The fact that I am Mexican and Cuban becomes very important to really kind of have a wider horizon of how a human being navigates this world.
Welcome to the Acting Smarter Now podcast. I am your hostess, Lydia Nicole, actress, producer, and acting career coach, dedicated to helping you break through the noise, own your craft, and take your career from undiscovered to unstoppable. Question for you. What do you do when the industry doesn't make space for your voice? Do you run home and just have a tantrum? Do you pick up your toys and just get out of Dodge? Or do you create your own content and bring it to the forefront? Well, today I am talking to that woman who took her creativity, her acting ability, and decided to make her own content. I'm talking about the one and only actress producer Yareli Arizmendi. She was in Water for Chocolate, which she was outstanding in, and she created her own project, which brought her to the forefront. A Day Without a Mexican. And that project is actually still relevant today because with all the stuff going on, let me tell you, it is relevant today. So without further ado, let's go to the interview. What's the most rebellious thing you've ever done creatively? Something you weren't supposed to do, but you knew at that moment you had to do it.
Oh my God. I have to just say that I'm always very like deer in the headlights when with any question. It'll be like, as if I haven't lived and I never did what you're talking about. It's like I always was so well behaved. That's true. Actually, from the very beginning of my career, well, what I didn't even know was going to be my career, I would jump into things using what I know how to do, which is express in a loud manner, in service of something else. There's always a purpose in my world to why I'm doing things. I remember at the university, there was a women's conference and they asked me to participate and we need, women's rights, this and that. And all of a sudden you said, are you going to be there? I'm like, of course I'm going to be there. And when I walked in as if I were completely lost and in tears and nobody knew me. And so it was this whole thing of like, I needed help. And it was this whole thing to illustrate what being alone and seeking an abortion or seeking help with a pregnancy that was unwanted, that was this and that. And, it was all about the theme of the conference, but they didn't know that I was going to just do a performance. And most of the people didn't know who I was. So everyone started getting very concerned. It's like, well, can we give her resources? I mean, is there somebody here? Is there somebody? And only the two of the organizers knew, and they didn't know how to stop it. But it was so effective because I knew it was illustrating everything that they needed to talk about. But it was unusual because they weren't sure. It's like, but you're going to be there, right? You're going to talk. I'm like, of course I'm going to be there. I'm going to talk, of course. But the manner in which I chose to do it was highly unexpected, very effective. And, and I think that stayed with me as this is the way to be out in the world, not what they expect, but definitely talk about when it needs to be talked about, in action.
When was the moment that you realized your voice mattered? You just had that aha. What I have to say is so important.
This is unusual because it's actually the written word that gave me that assurance. I wound up going in 1984 to Nicaragua with Teatro de la Esperanza for the Sandinista elections, right? And the Reagan re-election. So it's a key moment, 1984, right? And I'm like, we'll talk about more how I wound up in that circumstance, but there I was with Teatro de la Esperanza, the second most important Chicano theater company after Teatro Campesino. And I just happened to be part of the show that they were taking down there. And because I had declared that I wanted to do theater, but only if it was, political. And Luis Valdez, when I encountered him, taught me that could be possible. So there I was in Nicaragua. And I am looking at the reality of like, what are we doing here at this cultural festival? There's a revolution, there are bombs, there are planes, flag. I mean, what is this? So I had to open my eyes, and just really kind of take it all in. When I came back, because I had gotten two professors to agree that I would do independent studies for that semester. And so I had to give my talk in the political science department and in the theater department as well. So it was from two different perspectives. But I wrote for my essay for the detailing my trip in it was called The Guardian, which was the UCSD newspaper. And one of my professors and mentors said, if we had submitted this, to the Pulitzer Prize, you would have won, because of the way that you are so sincere. You analyze, but you never hide away from you being there. It's all through you. And at the same time, you are applying all of the concepts that you have learned in your political science and power and the handling of this and that. But we never lose track of why this is important. And it's important because a human being is witnessing it. I think that was a moment when it's like, wow, I'm talking politics worldwide. Everybody's talking about this issue. Is it Reagan? Is it, the Sandinistas, this and that? But the way that he said to me, it mattered because it was your perspective. You put yourself in the middle of it. And that is what kept me interested all to the end, and I was like, okay, so my presence, my way of seeing things matters and will keep people to the end trying to understand what I'm trying to relay. So, and I think that I kind of apply that to everything that I try to do, that it's not like a way out there, rational, conceptual, blah, 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 blah. Bring it back to why it is important to human beings and to life on earth. I mean, like why these big concepts would matter.
I want to talk about your mother and father because you got fire. It comes from somewhere. If you could share with us who your mother was and who your father was, so we get an understanding of who Yareli is.
This is an interesting question. I think I've come to beautiful terms with both my father and my mother, who are no longer on this plane, but, very present, both of them in my life, and for different reasons. My father was a surgeon turned psychologist, because he was at the cusp of when psychology started to be a discipline. And he was convinced that a lot of his patients that he would, perform surgery on really had nothing going on with them physically, but had created the problems that they had, from a mental point, because they had mental issues, right? As opposed to the physical manifestation that he was now treating with a knife, right? I mean, on the operating table. He was a psychoanalyst because, of course, he was a doctor, so he could prescribe medicines, et cetera, et cetera. So he comes from that. I mean, he comes from a family that was very religious, and he rejected religion. I mean, a very Catholic kind of Opus Dei almost family. And he rejects it, and he goes out into the world to find his way. He meets my mother, who is Cuban, right? Oh, my father is Mexican. I have to say that. That's important. The cultural difference is going to be important in my life. My mother, who is Cuban, has a scholarship that has landed her in Mexico to study. And she's very funny because she said, I could have gone to France or Mexico. And I chose Mexico. And I said, really, why? Because of the films and the pyramids. And I'm like, okay, we could go into more with that. But she was studying psychology, precisely. She had been a social worker in Cuba and stuff, but she was, enamored with the idea of like, there's so much going on in the mind that we don't understand, and I am here to discover it. So they found each other at the hospital, at the military hospital, was where in Mexico, where my father was a surgeon and she was an intern. So they meet and they marry, and of course they had me. And then there was a very violent divorce, between them. What ended up later being my my way of navigating the world, which is always trying to understand what is really at the depth of things happening. And it's not just the personal that I'm receiving. It's like, where are things coming from? And that was politically to try to understand where my mother had come from, which was a Spanish father that had run from in the Civil War from Franco and had wound up in Cuba, right? So that's like a political kind of
Mm.
exile situation, but who raised her and her three sisters to be very, to self-determine and to be able to take care of themselves, that don't depend on anybody else. You've got to be your own person in this world. And kind of a more socialist view, meaning when I say socialist, is like you need to care about those around you. It's not just about you. So that was very much her attitude. And my father, on the other hand, running away from the Opus Dei kind of, this is the way things are, and you can't change things, and God will punish you, et cetera, et cetera, and trying to find his way on the other side. I think it's interesting that he was a surgeon, which is like all of a sudden you are, I mean, as human as it gets, getting into the body and changing the body. You are changing the body. If anything, he became a little bit of God himself, so there was that. So I think that both of them were very passionate. My mother, after this divorce, it went on between when I was 5 and 7. And it's important because she was a foreigner in Mexico. She was a Cuban woman, right? And my father, who by then was like had a great reputation as like this psychoanalyst, who knew of these new techniques, etc. So he had contact with a lot of very important politicians and important people with power. So in this divorce, he chose, because the way he saw it, this was what should happen. He basically kidnapped my brother and myself, and we were not returned to my mother. So this is, and her way of fighting was through her journalist friends, because that's the only resource that she had. And as I said, she was a foreigner in Mexico. So that it was even harder, because it's like, how are you going to, go to your friends or fight, and what, the judge, that that. So, she gets caught in this horrible situation of no power, right? Of having no power, and the desperation of seeing your children taken from you. And at that time, I didn't know exactly what was happening. I was too little, and it was my father or my mother. And my father says, come here and stay here. And, so it wasn't clear what was happening in my head. But her sister from Puerto Rico came for her and took her to Puerto Rico. And she was disillusioned with the world of psychology and psychologists, because she felt my colleagues are watching this happen and they're doing nothing about it, which it's not the fault of psychology, really. It's the fault of power, no power. Is there going to be consequences? No consequences. So nobody raised their voice in her favor. So she just left it. She said, this is crazy. This is not, I'm saying, there is no ethics in this profession. So she then became a writer, and an incredible writer and a theorist of Latin American literature, and specializing in women's literature. And a lot of what she did, when I finally saw her again from 7 to 16, I didn't see her. I saw her one day then. And then I saw her when I was 20. And then our relationship became magical and incredible. But to find the depth of woman, that I found in her, professionally committed, politically committed, to really giving Latin America its own voice. No longer, because she had studied all of the theory, literary theory worldwide, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's about time that we talk about ourselves, and we are not talked about. So that was key in me, the way that I see the world today. So that's very much where the fire comes from.
So your father raises you in Mexico. What made him send you to Kansas for high school?
Well, that's a crazy moment. I mean, and I say crazy moment not from a personal point of view, because I became very, in order to understand reality, as I said, it's like you need to understand what is really going on. Why is he sending me away? Why is he sending my brother away? And it just so happens that we happen to be my mother's children, and not my step brothers and my step sisters and my stepmother's family. They're staying right there with him, right? So as a kid, you're like, huh, I mean, were we so misbehaved, my brother and myself, or why, because that was the excuse. It was sort of like, you want to live by yourself. Because if you can imagine, I had gone silent and would not speak in my house. I was quiet. And it's like, oh, fine. So you don't want to speak. You don't want to share anything that you are doing and whatever. It's like, fine, we're going to send you off. You can go live by yourself. And of course, as professionals that they were, to live by yourself is to send you to a boarding school, right? But I was ready to send me to the streets. You know what I'm saying? Because I know there's people out there that I like that can help me out. And I don't understand why anytime I say any word that is supposed to mean something, you hear something else and you get really mad at me. And he was a violent man. There is violence in the whole thing. So anyway, I wind up in Kansas, and let me tell you, Kansas to me was my saving grace. I mean, it was kind of funny. You think Mexico City, and not only not it wasn't Kansas City, it wasn't like the big city. It was Atchison, Kansas, which is a small town, which at one point was very important in the United States. It was the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe Railroad that distributed goods to to the rest of the country. So, I mean, there was a lot of history in that little tiny place, Atchison, but there was a Benedictine college, and thus there was the male prep school, Moore Prep School, and the Academy of Mount Saint Scholastica. And remember, I wasn't Catholic. I was not raised Catholic, and there I was in Catholic school, and I could not be happier. And I loved, landing in Kansas and kind of in a weird way having to explain myself to them, because for them, they didn't believe me that I was from Mexico, because at the time I spoke English. So it's like, well, but you're not really Mexican. I'm like, why? Because you speak English. It's like, well, anybody can learn a language. That's not, I mean, that doesn't make you whatever. It's like, yeah, but I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Like, and all the programs that we know, right? Because there was cable television in Mexico. And so I was like very Charlie's Angels, Starsky and Hutch, and it's like, how can you know all that if you're from Mexico? And I'm like, wow. All right, let me try to explain to you what Mexico is. It is the largest city in the world. It is a this and that. And they were like, but you ride donkeys, don't you? And I'm like, no, I've never seen one, but they ride donkeys in the farm, I'm sure. But it's like, it was the first time that I was like really confronted with, wow, there are people that know nothing.
With stereotypes. You were confronted with the American stereotype.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that stereotype was coming from the television programs, because there was no other, like, how else, right? I mean, it was probably Bonanza that they were like, I mean, what, I don't know where they were getting at. So whenever I would say,
you had Bonanza, you had the cowboy movies. The thing that the United States is very good for is portraying any culture outside of the United States as third world, as I mean, you're talking about the donkey, and I'm thinking, I remember watching the Little Rascals and seeing something about them going to Africa and the witch doctors. And that was what I had in my head was, oh, I don't want to go to Africa. I don't want to go to Africa because they got witch doctors who would shrink your head and then eat you. That's what I took away. So United States Americans, not Canadians, not South Americans or Central Americans, we are fed a lot of propaganda. If it's not homegrown, it is inferior. And which is why your voice is so important. But we're going to talk more about that. But first I want to talk about, so now you're in Kansas. When did you get the acting bug? Because I know you started out in ballet, but when did you get, as a, 5, 6, you were doing ballet?
I'm very extreme when I like something. It's like I like it to the death. And so at one point, my parents, my father and my stepmother, they had to take me out of ballet, because it's like I was like, nothing else exists, but you have a birthday party that I'm like, no, but I have class. I can't, I have to be ready for tomorrow, my class. And it's like, but your class is tomorrow. It's not today. It's like, yes, but I need to stretch and I need to go. So I was like, I would have been a ballerina, and thank God they took me out of that life, because the Royal Academy of Dancing in Mexico, they did talk to my parents when I was 8, and they said, we need to send her to London now. She could be an incredible dancer. She's got potential, blah, 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 blah. And they said, absolutely not. I mean, this is not, we don't want her to be like a ballerina, whatever. And when I found that out, and I didn't find out till 10, when I was 10, my whole world collapsed. And I was like, my God, you have taken away. I mean, yeah, dramatics always, from the get go. But I was like, how could you take dance away from me? And then they tried to put me into jazz and, what about folklorico? And I was like, oh my God, no, classical ballet. What do you mean folklorico with those skirts? Oh God, no. It was like, it was crazy. So then they put me in gymnastics because it was like, let's take her out of dance, so it was, I mean, it's not that I was a hard little girl to get to understand, but they didn't know how to really talk to me, so they would make things happen and so ballet was gone. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden it was like, you can't just do that to a little kid, that is passionate about something. It's like, you have to kind of explain why. And of course they didn't want to go into like, she's going to be in London in this crazy discipline thing. And they're going to, I don't, no, that's not the life we envision for her. So, that's fine. But they did envision Kansas, and there I was. And I was so happy. Oh, let me just say about the cultural understanding of like, well, who am I in Kansas? It finally settled that it made sense that when they told me she's like Susan Lucci, and I was like, whatever. Doesn't mean anything to me. Who's Susan? Oh, what do you mean, Susan Lucci? She's like from all my children and this and that. And I was like, oh, you have soap operas because telenovelas. I thought, oh, I didn't know that Americans had that, but of course it was day programming, so that's not what
Mhm.
we got in cable TV in Mexico. So anyway, when I'm like on my research of like who is the Susan Lucci, and of course they said it because I kind of look like who's the dark hair, dark eyed kind of whatever dramatic or
Spitfire. You're Spitfire.
Spitfire, right? So
Yes.
that there, once they settled into like who I was like, then they were fine. Okay, fine. So she speaks English and she says she speaks Spanish, but I mean, we don't care because we haven't even heard her speak Spanish, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm not going to speak.
And where did you learn English in Mexico? First of all, your English is impeccable. It is impeccable, So I'm sure that messed them up because what they're hearing has no accent.
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of an interesting thing in itself. My stepmother, born in Mexico, but to American parents, and she was Jewish. And the American school was kind of the place where, well, not kind of the place. The American school was the place where she sent my stepbrothers and my stepsister, and she had been a teacher. And the American school in Mexico is actually very progressive. It was a lot of blacklisted Americans that wound up in Mexico and created this school, and diplomats and politicians, but artists and things like that. So it's an interesting mix, politics wise, the American school. But you had to definitely speak English perfectly because from that it was truly bilingual education. It was everything in Spanish and everything in English. So you had biology, math, etc., in English and Spanish during the it was like twice a day. So it was very good education. And I thought it was so much fun to learn English. I mean, to me it was a game. It was, so the accent thing, and I had a tutor who was from Dallas. So my English was so Texas, and my stepmother was like going nuts because like, stop talking like that, stop talking so Texas. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking, what are you talking about? What are you? And it was hilarious, that whole fight, because she couldn't explain why. I mean, I'm speaking English, right? Isn't this English? I mean, she's the teacher. That's the way she speaks. And so my stepmother couldn't explain why she hated that accent, because she was kind of more like whatever, kind of New York kind of posh,
Yes.
English. So it was like, stop talking like that. Like I was making it up. But anyway, so that's when I kind of would play with accents and found out that people reacted different to like, what if I sound like Miss Karen? Like the Texan thing. And what if I sound like Betty, like my stepmother? And what if oh, that's interesting. They react different, to like how my grandmother talks and whatever. So when I got to Kansas, yes, they were confused. It was like, you don't sound You don't even sound Mexican. I didn't realize that probably if I had put on, like a little accent of, yes, I come from Mexico and they would have been more comfortable. So anyway, so I arrived there, and after school activities are a godsend. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have that in Mexico, not really. After school, you went home to eat lunch, right? It's a different structure. So I became fascinated with everything that was a possibility, which was the drama club for one. There were speech. I got into the speech team, and they had this thing called duet acting. Go search for a partner and do these duets. And
Mhm.
and so all of a sudden it was more it was more theater than not musical theater, because what I did in the drama club, they would put up all these musicals, and of course I was Maria in West Side Story, right? I mean, it was like whatever, but I was excited. I was excited to be there and to develop. I finally, well, not finally, I became the school president of the school by my senior year. So you can see how, I mean, I was very happy to be in Atchison, Kansas. That was a fantastic experience. And I love them to today.
Now, was your brother in Kansas as well in the boys'
He
school?
had been, because he's older than me, so he had been sent to the boys' school. So there were some of the boys that knew him. So they was like, oh wow, you are Fidel's, sister. That's amazing. That's so great. And so they would tell me about, because he was very creative as well. He was making little movies, and putting everybody into the show and whatever. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, it's like sometimes you thrive all of a sudden from having gone a year without speaking a word. All of a sudden, I would not be quiet. I mean, and I was very participatory. I was really into the community. I actually I was part of the choir at the cathedral and this and that. I mean, so I became very Catholic in a sense, and to the Catholic culture, not so much into the beliefs, because I ran into trouble in Kansas in my kind of in discussions in religion class, because I thought it was up for discussion. I thought it was like a philosophy class or something. I mean, it's all the world's religions, and all of a sudden it was like, you do understand this is a Catholic school. This is a Benedictine Catholic school. This is not up for discussion whether you think this is appropriate or not. I mean, this is the Bible. And I'm like, yeah, but you discuss, right? That's education. You discuss the concept. It's like, no, you don't. So it was very funny, like to finally understand. It's like, okay, I can be here if I goes, but you're very Catholic. You go to church every Sunday and you sing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm there for the singing. But anyway, you know,
So, what made you decide to go to college in San Diego?
well, in the family drama, after my father had not spoken to me for close to 3 years, because like, he had sent me away and I was so bad and this and that. But all of a sudden, senior year is coming, and it's like, what's next for this girl? Obviously, I was in the honor roll. I was in I had kind of
You
done,
excelled.
I excelled. I had done well. So according to my father, when he finally spoke to me again, he said that it was incredible how I had changed, and how I had, become this other person that they had wished always I had been, this and that. I'm like, and I kept quiet. I had learned to just, listen, be quiet, and, absorb. And I said, I haven't changed one bit. I'm exactly how I was, except when I was with you. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of like, don't say that, obviously, because he'll get mad again. But so now we want you to come, to university in San Diego. And I was like, what? Okay, I'm not saying one thing, but I'm not revealing one thing, which is, as I mentioned, I saw my mother for one day when I was 16. And I had kept in touch with my mother through letters. I have found her again. And my plan, because I had not heard from my father, was to go back to Mexico and study. And I was like under my mom in my mind. I was going to live with my mom, not my mind. I mean, that was my plan with my mother. But then when my father comes back into the picture, my mother says, you don't have to protect me. Listen to your father, save the relationship if there's something to be saved. If he wants to pay for your university, take it. Don't do this for me. Do what you need to be done.
At that moment, your mother had left Puerto Rico and come back to Mexico.
She had come back to Mexico. She went to the Colegio de Mexico. She did a doctorate in literature with the angle of women's literature. And she had really developed a beautiful career for herself. And she was a writer as well. And she was doing all this work. But she said, if I don't come back to Mexico, my children will never find me. Right. Which she was right, you know. And, and so I had found her for that one day, right? And which was, yeah, I had to come back to Mexico for that brief moment, and so that's when it happened. I will go into the whole detail of it, but so we had a relationship, and she was my strength. I mean, she showed me a different way of seeing the world. I mean, it was amazing. Not her truth and my father and her and this and that. It was like just about like, do you know the first book that she gave me was Las Venas Abiertas de Latinoamérica, Eduardo Galeano, the open veins of Latin America. How is it? I mean, it's radical just because it tells the story of Latin America, from a very Eduardo Galeano, Uruguayo, an incredible writer and an incredible way of telling history, he was a poet. So while he's telling you history, he's writing these incredible, it's a literary, fantastic book, and I'm reading all the history of Mexico and the history of Argentina and Venezuela, this and that. So all of a sudden I'm like not fixed on the United States, but actually looking at the rest of the continent, which was very important at that moment. And it was all my mother that made me turn my gaze back to where you come from and what you should know, the rest of the continent in relationship to the United States. But it's not all the United States. Anyway, back to my father re-enters my life. He decides that they're going to be moving from Mexico City to San Diego, which was a big moment in Mexican economics times, 1982, around there. There was a big devaluation and there was a big, huge change. And there was fear of like a revolution is coming and this and that. And I mean, I won't get into the whole setup of that, but that's how they wind up in La Jolla, California. And so they want me to go to the university in San Diego, right? And I'm like, okay, I will go, and I will. I started doing like work study and all of the financial aid. Anyway, so I was I was very excited about going to college. There was no question about like you're not going to go to college. It was always definitely this. So I wind up at UCSD, and in 1 year exactly, I get into a horrible fight with my father again. And I decide that there's no way that we can really be together. I call my mom and I say, I don't want to go into the craziness that was happening before. This, as I mentioned, this idea of anytime I say something, he misinterprets it completely. And it's like, it's the words change meaning in midair, or I don't know what happens because we cannot speak.
Did he have that same relationship with your brother, or was it more with you?
It was with both of us.
So he couldn't take your mother's energy in any way. You
Very,
guys represented your mother to him,
yeah.
which he did not want to. Okay, I'm with you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I mean, he had no idea that I was in touch with my mother, but he could sense, like if my mother had something, she had. I love Cubanos when they say they use the word dignidad all the time, right? To them, it's so easy to say, no, 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 no me falta o sea, yo tengo dignidad y yo tengo this and that, and you hear it as a Mexican, you hear that word, and it's like you're not quite sure what they're talking about, what it means, but it's like important to them. And later on, is that I start to say, it's like dignidad is if I have money, no money, that doesn't matter. I am a human being, and you
Your
are too.
humanity, yes, always.
that's why Cubanos will say to a Mexican, ¿Por qué you're so agachado? What is that? Why? How do you allow yourself to be trampled on and to be this? Like, way. I mean, un Mexicano will say, I know, but I have to kind of navigate this. You know what I'm saying? I don't have that much power. I need the job. I need this. Like, yeah, but what about your dignity? Is like, I don't know. That word is not as important to me. Survival is. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I said the fact that I am Mexican and Cuban becomes very important to really kind of have a wider horizon of
Mhm.
how a human being navigates this world, and where is it that dignidad comes in? No matter what, I will lose my job, I may lose my house, I may go out, but you know what? You don't talk to me like that, and you stand up, and it's interesting. It's not that a Mexican doesn't have dignidad, is that he goes about it, or the culture goes about it in a different way.
He
And part of
becomes
it,
submissive when he is abused or she is abused. It's easier to just become submissive.
and my mother, we talked about it a lot, like what is it, because she would get exasperated with Mexico, and then she would answer herself with history. She said, the amount of violence and massacre that has happened on Mexican land is incredible. So that is different from Cuba. It is very different experience, and that is why I think Mexicans are, in a smart way, if you are to survive, keep it tiny, small, make yourself invisible if need be, like, just, which is not the experience of Cubanos, well, not, I'm sure that there's like some part of Cuba that is that,
Pero no hay mucho, no hay mucho.
so it's interesting, and it's funny because a lot of people that when they meet me, they say, you're not, but no, pero tú no eres mexicana, and I'm like, why the hell are you saying that to me, that I'm not Mexicana? It's like, no, but you're so, and they always kind of go like, you so what, like, loud, opinionated, bien acá, and I'm like,
Fiery. You are
and that is the
fiery.
Cubana place, that is definitely the Cubana, and seeing how I left my mother when I was 7, she would always say, see, like, by the time you're 7, you're all formed. It's all in you. You know what I'm saying? And because, I mean, it's like, where do you know to be so stand up? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
But
And
it's also in the DNA.
yeah,
Yes, it is in the raising, but it's also in the bloodline. It's just part of you. And that's probably what your dad saw. So you started acting in high school. Now you are in college. Are you being able to transfer some of that stuff in your college classes or in your college activities?
well, you'll laugh at this, but it makes, I mean, it makes absolute sense. I said, okay, I want to be an actor. Definitely, this is what I love to do. But seeing how the world is burning up, I need to kind of do something about, stopping the violence, the burning just yet. So my plan was to study nutrition and economics, and I was going to do a double major, because to me, there was no reason why anybody in the world should be starving. I mean, that was like nonsensical. I saw a lot of food around me. I saw a lot, and I also saw that a lot of when people had money, or when you had your few coins, you made the wrong choice. You didn't buy the nutritious stuff. You would buy the, of course, the chips and the sodas and the this and that. And I'm like, that's not what you should be eating. You should be eating this and that. I don't know. I think that's the doctor in my mom and the doctor in my father, that I was very aware of nutrition from a young age. So I thought, okay, we need to get nutrition education to all of the population, and then economics. Why do some people have food and some people don't? There needs to be a change. And at one point, a professor that was my, I needed to consult. What are you doing? Where are your classes, etc. And I explained this to him, and he said, well, where you should be is in political science, because you need to know how power works, who makes the decisions, and why. So I went into political science with a theater minor. I never stopped acting, and I never, I was going to do it, but I was like, this is kind of so frivolous next to getting something to change the world. And then that's when I meet Jorge Huerta, the professor, the Chicano theater professor who had become, his lifetime had become documented Chicano theater. And I
Mm.
had no idea what Chicano was, and they would talk about it like I should know. So I started to research, but it was like, yeah, I'm Mexican from Mexico City. I'm not, Mexican American. What is this? But we're in San Diego. So there's like a big Mexican American, Hispanic, Latino population that I'm not understanding. Why are they, why some of them look very, very Mexican, don't speak a word of Spanish, but this and that. So I'm starting to kind of look at this. I wind up in one of his classes because I met him when at the Old Globe Theater. I was volunteering so that I could see the theater plays, right? I met him because it was for the first time they were putting up a Puerto Rican play, Los Soles Truncos. It's like, it was, I don't know, Lillian Hurst and no, or I can't remember the actresses, but I was like so taken by them. And he was directing, and it was the first time that it was like a Hispanic director at the local theater and a cast, right? And so she said, "Oh, so good to meet you. You should be in my class in the Chicano Theater Ensemble at UCSD because that's where I teach and this and that." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll enroll." And I was like, "What is Chicano and what is this whole thing?" So anyway, I started to find out, and it was then that there was a summer workshop with Luis Valdez, with Teatro Campesino, and he said, "Well, you should audition. This is a great opportunity." And I'm like, "Who's Luis Valdez?" I mean, it's like, oh, mija, he's suit, and I'm like, "What suit?" I nothing. But because when I went to Luis Valdez and I learned about, Cesar Chavez, the farm workers, union being formed, theater helping to organize the farm workers and the boycott and the this and that, I'm like, oh my God. So politics, right? And the power of making decisions is not, you know, far from what you could use theater to make happen. So maybe I can study theater. So that's when I go back, and right in there, after I spend the summer with Teatro Campesino with Luis Valdez. He gets a phone call from Teatro de la Esperanza that they need an actress that can sing and dance. And I'm like, I didn't know that Luis Valdez recommended me, but that's who recommended me to Teatro de la Esperanza. So then when I auditioned for them, it was so funny because it was like the audition was a corrido, and I was a Mexican corrido, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know a Mexican corrido. What is that? Is it Adelita? Is it what? I'm saying, because I had been very Americanized in Mexico, so it's not like I had all of these things at my fingertips. So, but I go to the library, I learn this rielera, no, yo soy rielera, tengo mi Juan, and I'm like, so I start to sing it, and at that time, it was Jose Saucedo that was auditioning me. And of course, I sing the corrido as if I were Olivia Newton John, right? So I was like, in that high, I always wanted to be a soprano because, of course, everybody wanted to be a soprano. So I was like, yo soy rielera, tengo mi Juan. And he goes, okay, that's good. That's good. Can you go lower? And I'm like lower, yeah, like lower your voice, like strong, like
Lower register, yeah.
I'm like, yo soy rielera, tengo mi Juan, lower. Yo soy rielera, tengo mi Juan, lower. Yo soy rielera, tengo mi Juan, and I'm like, was like, oh my God, where did that voice come from? So I thank him and I thank Chicanos for finding my voice because it
Mm.
was just I was like, where that power of it's supported, right? Natural, not that I became like, oh my God, operatic singer at the get-go, but I mean, it was like, yeah, the breath, can do what it needs to do. Your body knows how to kind of push out the music, and naturally you're sounding so strong. And I was like, it goes, there it is, there it is. That's what we like. Yeah. Okay. We'll call you, and they called me immediately. But that was wow. So that's where I start, and I wind up in Nicaragua with Jose Luis Valenzuela was in the ensemble of, we did a play called Y la Muerte Viene Cantando. So I had to learn it in a week. in order to get on the plane. And it was just, and Jorge helped me ask permissions for these independent field studies. I'm a sophomore in college, so it's not like, oh yeah, she's a graduate, what a student that can kind of, she's going to go do her thesis or something. But I managed to get professors that were interested. Of course, they were interested in what the hell is happening in Nicaragua at this moment. So for them, it was like, wow, do you dare to go? And I'm like, yeah, because it's a theater piece, and we're rehearsing. Whatever. So that's how it happened. That's kind of how it happened. Yeah, when I came back, just having been in like a country that was trying to put itself together, in a situation that was at the time, because I mean, what has happened to Nicaragua 30 years later is like, let's not discuss right now. But there, it was just, the energy was just amazing. It was beyond, it was young people, the politicians were young, you know what I'm saying? Whether they had fought for their country, and this idea that they had cultura es fusil artístico de la revolución was the thing. I'm like, okay, because I'm like, what are we doing singing here? What are we doing with this theater? I mean, it's like, do you understand that this brings people together? That once you have people together and thinking about things, you can then say, let's go out and do this. You know what I'm saying? So it's a powerful organizing tool. It's not just, the play so that you can show off and be, oh, wow, isn't Yareli fantastic when she dances, whatever. It's like, I felt fantastic, but that was not the point. The point was,
It's using theater for revolution. Yeah, you're using theater to awaken the people, to get them fired up.
yeah. And usually talking about things that are not necessarily talked about,
Mhm.
so yeah.
So when did you get connected with like Water for Chocolate? Because it wasn't necessarily a straight, I'm going to audition. You went around it a whole different way.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. I was that by then I was doing my master's in my MFA. So I had graduated from political science and theater, and then I entered the MFA.
And what were you majoring in your MFA? Was it theater
No, it
or
was theater,
okay?
but most people assumed that it was acting, but it was
Okay.
dramaturg, as a
Oh,
dramaturg.
wow. Okay. Okay.
Which makes sense when you hear me talking about the politics and about the this and how do you write a play, because it wasn't even just playwriting, it was dramaturg, right? And
Mhm.
what sense is there in putting up this play or writing about this or talking, I'm saying, so it made so much sense to me to be in that. Of course, I was acting all the time as I was in the MFA.
What made you decide this is the track? I'm gonna get my MFA and I'm gonna be a dramaturg.
I knew that I wanted to be in theater and in political theater.
Okay.
And writing, perhaps what I found is that a lot of the material had not been written, and that I would have to write it. I would have to create it either in a collective creation situation, or guided with directors that wanted to touch on these subjects, and then I would be a dramaturg, perhaps playwright, and actor, right? Which later on you see how that pans out. I mean, it does pan out, in I wasn't crazy to think that way. So there I was. I go to Mexico and for spring break, and my mother had just introduced this book and this author to the press, from this publisher, Oceano, that had Laura Esquivel and her novel, Like Water for Chocolate, right? So I meet Laura, right? And I read Like Water for Chocolate, but it's all because of my mother, who fought for that book to be published, because the head of the publishing house uh, called her up. He had been one of my mother's students and had obviously studied with her women's literature. And when he got the manuscript for Like Water for Chocolate, he called her up and said, read this and tell me, is this what you say is women's literature? I mean, is this, because of course, Like Water for Chocolate is not like pretending to be literary, blah, 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 blah. It is telling you a story and using, the recipes, and using like a very female language in a sense, and female power in the kitchen and in this to tell a story. So the minute my mother read it, called him right back and said, "You must publish this. This is exactly what we talked about in class because of this and that and that and that and that." So anyway, so she winds up at the head of like presenting the book to the press and to when it comes out. Laura at that moment is very close to my mom, right? Well, I arrive, and 2 days later we have a party that we have to go to because it's so and so's birthday, and Laura's going to be there, and so I meet Laura Esquivel at that moment. And she says, "Well, I'm going to go on a promotion tour. I will be in Los Angeles and San Diego and this." And I'm like, "Oh, great. We'll all be there. I'll get all my people to go and see you." And there will be this play that I'm doing that I wrote that it was called Who Buys Your Shoes? And if you have time, I'd love for you to see it at the university, this and that, So it was like, so that's where we kind of hit it off. And she actually came to San Diego. She did see the play, and we were all at part of her book tour. So I knew the book well. By summer of that, I'm talking, this is 1989, I think. By summer, October, I don't remember exactly. Let me see. So I go back to Mexico because during the summer I would teach acting in Mexico, and I would stage my plays in a cabaret style place, because I was very much about like kind of cabaret acting, kind of cabaret like in the German cabaret, but the Mexican cabaret that is very political, very funny, right? There's a lot of humor, and there's food and drinks and stuff, and I love that atmosphere because it's a different kind of crowd attitude. It's not the formal theater and we're watching Shakespeare. It's kind of like, we're going to talk about what's happening out there, and this is my point of view, and it's like, so I had staged a play, and I was teaching, and Alfonso Arau and Laura had come to see it. So we had, we were, no, I'm sorry. Laura had come. I don't know if it was my play or that I had written a part of a play of a sketches to another play. So Laura, I saw her again. She introduced me to Sergio, who was Alfonso's son, but he was a rock and roller, and we have to go see this fashion show that is rock and roll. So you're gonna, you'll meet him. And so that's when I first meet Sergio. This is the end of 1989.
Your husband to be.
But it was interesting because it just so happened that he happened to know my mother. And I'm like, "How do you know my mother?" It's like, "Well, I was illustrator for the books, the textbooks, the public textbooks of the schools in Mexico. My mother was part of the committee of developing the pedagogical materials, but Sergio was part of the illustration, of artists that did all the illustrations for the books. So they had met at one point. And the reason I say this is because it's interesting that, my mother had pictures of Sergio's illustrations around her house. Right. And it's like, "Oh yeah, Sergio. Yeah, I know. That's his, let's remember that calendar that I had. That's his." So this happens, right? I don't pay too much attention. I mean, it's more like Sergio and I, we say hi and whatever. I mean, and later, in 1990, now we're getting into 1990. They're starting to want to make the film like Water for Chocolate, and all of a sudden I get involved because they need a translation of the script, right? So I translate the script so that Alfonso can go find money. He needs it now. He needs it like in 4 days. Everything was like in an emergency, and I won't forget because it's like, thanks to the existence of the fax, I said, "Fax me the first 30 pages and I'll get to it. And FedEx me the rest and I will send it to you." You know what I'm saying? So it was the faxes and the FedExes that allowed the translation to get there on time and for them to go find money. And then, of course, I was back in Mexico, 1990 summer, and I see Sergio again. He comes to see my play. I'm back down in Mexico teaching and doing this whole thing. So we very, very fast hit it off because we see the world in a very similar way. We are, people are amazed because it's like, "You're not a rocker. You hate rock and roll. You this and that." And I do hate rock and roll because it's always too loud for me to hear the words. and I can see that you're trying to say something, but I can't understand what you're saying. So it's like it drives me nuts. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if let me see your words, and I will listen to your song in my house. And it's like, no, that's not the point. You know what I'm saying? Because I was enamored with the lyrics of Sergio's stuff, Botellita de Jerez and stuff, very Mexican rock. I mean, Mexican rebellious rock and roll in the face of American rock and roll. So I kept thinking, oh my God, if Chicanos learn about you and your group, they will adore you. They will love you. My God, you know what I'm saying? This is going to be so incredible. And I was kind of wrong, because I don't think in the politics, in the cultural politics of the United States, of Mexicans and Chicanos in the United States, you kind of love a nostalgic Mexico. You don't want a contemporary Mexico. You know, it's like, I am contemporary. I'm living it right now here, Mexican American in this world, you know. But like, why are you showing me rock and roll from Mexico? What's that? It's changed by now, 30 years later. But at the time, I was so wrong. They did not react well.
You helped get the script translated. You translated so they could get money. How do you get to audition for the role?
Mm. When I'm in Mexico doing my cabaret play, and you know, I'm teaching, I get asked to come audition, and I'm like, yes, you know, and I'm very, very happy. At that time, I was very much a theater actor, and I didn't think that TV and film had the same soul that theater does.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how
Mm-hmm.
we actors get very serious about, like, theater is the place, of course, because that's where we're powerful. You know, it's not like film where it's like the director and the editor and everything else is out of your hands. But I was very happy, because, you know, to be called to relay this story. The story was, to for me, it was all about, we need to tell this story, and I will play, you know, who do you want me to play, you know. And I went in for Rosaura, and I was fine with somebody asked me, it's like, why didn't you fight to audition for Tita? And it's like, I don't know, but everybody's important in that play. You know what I'm saying? It's like, in that play, I saw it like that. And it was like, you know, I think it's so, I analyze the whole, like, Whatever Chocolate as a political, you know, situation. Like, who is the system, who is like the revolutionary and the guerrilla and the this and that, that. I mean, I had it all. So I was very happy to be called to do this, and very excited to it when they actually didn't call me to say you got the role. It was like they invited me to lunch at their house, at their beautiful house, Alfonso and Laura, and they were talking to somebody else. It goes, well, Rosaura is sitting right there, but you know this and that. And it's like, what? It's like, you are Rosaura, Yareli, of course. And I was like, oh my God, is that like, yes, I am. I will be Rosa. So that's how I found out.
First of all, that film was so beautiful, so sensitive, so delicious. There were so many lovely layers to that film. And this being your introduction to film, this being, the world is now getting to know who you are through this film. You come back to the States. When do you decide you're going to go to Los Angeles to pursue the professional career?
Yeah, yeah. When I came back, I was in San Diego, and I was offered, the Cal State San Marcos had just opened, the new campus of the Cal State system. And San Marcos is just north of San Diego, right? And very close to what I knew. And I was offered to be the head of the theater faculty, and to kind of, very, when things begin, they're a beautiful thing, because it's like, that's when they're open to new ideas. And so I was very much into interdisciplinary work, both in the arts, I mean, playing with the visual arts and music and this and that, but also, again, the politics, right? And understanding what you're trying to say through art, et cetera, et cetera. And so I created kind of an interdisciplinary approach to that theater department. And I was, I mean, I said to Sergio, because my thing after like Water for Chocolate was I want to stay in Mexico. It's like, don't cry for me, Mexico. I am back, and it's like, well, Mexico didn't know that you were gone. They're like, whatever, and I couldn't get a job. And it is like the acting world is always difficult no matter where. But everybody that had been in the film, they were like, but you're from San Diego, right? I mean, you're not going to stay here. And it was kind of an interesting thing. Sergio was in an interesting moment in his career too. He had left his original band and was now painting and was what. So all of a sudden, I get this offer of to be the head of the department, and I said I have to say yes. It's like this is not. It's an option, but it's not an option. I mean, I'm excited to go do this. So we moved to northern San Diego, to Encinitas, because I used to live downtown San Diego. So that to me was like a big move. And I'm being an academic and I enjoy it. It's not that I don't enjoy it. I really, I respect it. I love being in front of students that are willing to, listen to what you have to say and get enchanted by what you are showing them. Because I was kind of a different kind of teacher, I have to say. I think they liked me because of that. But all of a sudden, like Water for Chocolate, it comes out, right? Because at that moment it had not come out, and it's in 1993 that it arrives into theaters in the United States. And at that moment, it's kind of like you have to make a decision. You're either going to go be a professional actress, and for that you will have to move to Los Angeles, or do you want to go the academic route and maybe act and I mean, there's other ways to act. It's not you have to stop. But really, if you're going to be like a real good academic, this is going to be your world. So at that point, after 2 years of being in the Cal State San Marcos, I decide to leave to Los Angeles. And Sergio at that time, he's also he has his record that's coming out, and he too needs a band. And it's weird how in San Diego, like all the bands kind of like they will come to Tijuana, but skip San Diego and go to LA, and the big groups too. I mean, it's like it was, all the big groups kind of like San Diego was not like an important market at all. So for Sergio, he needed his band to be in LA to be able to come. So we would, the last year that we were in Encinitas, we would like on the highway, on the freeway all day long. So I make that decision, and it was kind of like a very chancy, like, let's see what happens in LA. And it's interesting because even though the film was very successful, it was an art film at a time that it's an art film, it's a foreign film, it's foreign actors. These actors are almost characters. They're not actors that you're thinking of to like, can you give them a job in LA? I mean, that's not. So I got a lot of meetings with agents, which took me a while. I didn't know how to, they didn't teach me at UCSD how to walk the business. USC, I think, teaches you how to walk the business of, whatever you study there. But UCSD was not about that. So it took me a while to do these meetings and how do you talk to agents and this and that. But everyone wanted to meet me because I was in Like Water for Chocolate, but not because I'm an actor getting, ready to work in Los Angeles. It wasn't like, oh wow, so so good to meet you, and yeah, I'm looking forward to your next film. And I'm like, I you don't want to work with me to try to find my next film? What's going? I mean, it was weird, and then I didn't know what was happening. So finally, when I got, like an agent that said, okay, we'll sign you and we'll send you out and we'll see. But I don't see a lot of material coming through my office that I can think of will be exact. But I said, but it doesn't have to be exact. I'm an actor. I mean, so it can be, just send me to whatever you think. So my first job in LA, well, it had come, I was in Beverly Hills Cop 3, but that was because John Landis was very good friends of Alfonso Arau. So when the premiere, he sponsored the premiere of Like Water for Chocolate. And when he saw me, he was shooting Beverly Hills Cop 3. He goes, I want you in my film. And so I got a call and it was like, yeah, and we're going to give you top of billing, this and that. And I didn't even know what it was. But all of a sudden I was in this Hollywood film, you know what I'm saying? Like for a bit, it was like my kids get saved by Eddie Murphy. But anyway, so it was just kind of that thing. But then my very first audition that I went on was for NYPD Blue. And yeah, and I got it, thank God. And Jimmy Smits was so incredible, so helpful in navigating that one.
Stephen Bochco, God bless his soul. He did so much for people of color.
Yeah, he did.
Single-handedly, I should say, his production company
Yeah,
really did so much to not only bring in Latinos and blacks and whoever else in front of the camera, but as well behind the camera,
kind.
between him and between Stephen Bochco Productions and MTM. So many people owe their career to them because they really did a solid for so many. So you're starting to work now. How are you learning the business? Are you talking to friends who are kind of helping you navigate the waters? Because it's not about acting anymore. It's about networking and who you know and can you get into this room and
Yeah, it was difficult for me to know who to ask help from. I mean, I wasn't. It was kind of weird. I mean, we were here. We would put ourselves out there and going to places to meet people, but it wasn't the clear networking. It was, to me, it was like the excitement of going to this. I was truly there to be at the event. And so I kind of missed opportunities to meet people that were like, oh my, that huge person or whatever. I'm like, where were they? Oh my God, we didn't even think of looking for them. And how did I not know? And so quickly I kind of started to like, okay, I guess I think I have to be a little bit more aggressive and savvy and this and that. I wasn't great at doing that because I'm good one on one, but I'm not good at like arriving and making myself so seen and being so, I don't necessarily do that well, but I did have agents, and then I had some managers that somebody said to me, because it's not about the agents, it's about your managers. And I'm like, so how do you find your manager? Well, you need to look around, but it's like though a manager is that who's going, as a person who's really going to speak up for you and find you and this and that. So I ran into everything thanks to Like Water for Chocolate, I have to say. The reason I would run into these people would be because something like Water for Chocolate, and they would invite the people from Like Water for Chocolate. Alfonso Ara was in town for a bit. So, like, and Sergio and myself would, he would call us to hang out as family. So there we would be going to these events. But it was Peter Rowley and Betty Kaplan that I met. And he was the head of, very high up at ICM. And I said, well, Peter, it'd be really nice to be represented by ICM. And, I wonder if I can, speak to one of the agents. I was like trying to be forward and putting myself, you have to get yourself out there. And he said, okay, let me explain some. Agencies are financial institutions. And I'm like, okay, but you represent, actors for like, these roles and da da da. It's like, yes, but we only represent those actors that are making money for the agency. If you don't bring in at least $500,000 in a year, we cannot. I mean, financially, we cannot represent you, because the cost of representing this, he was talking way over my head, because I was like, why are you talking money? I'm talking art. What's Peter, do you not understand? I don't want a job in your agency. I want to be represented as an artist and this and that. So it was funny that, but he kind of liked my frankness, and that there was something about it. So he calls me up and goes, I'm going to put you in touch with somebody that can talk to you about managers. And in that at that moment, he hooked me up with these two guys that, I mean, everybody's starting out and is hungry and this and that. It was somebody that had worked with Peter who recommended this team of managers, and I met them, and of course they were very excited. And part of the reason that I think they were very, very excited was because they saw, oh my God, the Latin market, because they were not Latinos, right? So it was like, interesting. I mean, maybe we can figure out how to. They had been in touch with the Spanish market, like the Spaniards, a little bit. And one of the reasons Peter Rowley was very open to me was he represented Antonio Banderas and had been very close to the whole Spanish cinema. So that's how he had come to like Water for Chocolate, et cetera, et cetera. So it's
And let's be
everything.
clear,
Yeah,
Spanish cinema is different from Mexican cinema. It's
very.
different from South American cinema. It's very different because
Mhm.
I think sometimes people listening try to bunch it all up together.
So you're gonna get lost if you do that. You're gonna be kind of like wide-eyed, like, why aren't things happening? I mean, I speak Spanish. It's cinema. Well, yeah, I'm glad you clarified. But so anyway, so I started in with these managers that are way more aggressive. They changed me to another agency and this and that. And so I started to do a lot of guest stars in all the episodics that are out at that moment. And Botchko, thank you one more time. It was all of the shows that were up. I was in.
Now, how did you get your union card? I always love to know the first job that gets the actor the card.
The union card came from Beverly Hills Cop 3. Before Like Water for Chocolate, I had had one experience making a film, and I swore that I would never work in film again because it was Gregory Nava's. It's a film with William Hurt and Melissa Leo and
Okay.
Timothy Hutton. Destiny, as
Okay.
I know. And because I was at the Old Globe Theater, they had come to cast, do a casting for extras and all of this. And they were using the Old Globe Theater as a base. And so they saw me and they said, "Oh, you're perfect. We have a character." And I was like, "You have a character for me? Like, when do you need me to be there?" At 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, and this and that. I had never been in film. So, but I was very disciplined theater actor, right? So 4 a.m. and I am there at the train station, and I see like it's about 100 people, and we have to fill the train station. That's really what it's about. And we're all made up, and they do this. It was kind of like a 40s, yeah, it's a 40s film. So the costume, and we sit at the bench, and you sit there. I'm like, well, when are we going to shoot? Just sit. I'm saying, it was like that like the extras director that was like,
Right.
don't cause any
The
problems.
second AD. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
and I'm like, I'm just sitting there, and and I see the camera and I see the thing, and I'm like, I don't know why are we sitting here when the camera is totally on the other side, not even looking at us. We made nothing. There's nothing. And 6 o'clock in the afternoon comes around, and I'm like, I have a class at 7, and I need to get to my class. I cannot not make it to my class. So I go to the casting director and I said, "Excuse me, are we going to be done soon? Because I need to leave." It's like, "You cannot leave. You cannot leave. You are to sit here until." I'm like, "Yeah, but I have a class." It's like, I mean, if you leave, you will never work in this town again. He said it. He said it. He said the classic. And I'm like, I have to. I have a presentation at this class. I mean, I never knew. I came here at 4 a.m. It is now 6 p.m. and I have not done anything. And I got blah, 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 blah. And it's like, and they're looking, and as I'm discussing this, it's like, there she is. This other guy's like, the Spanish lady. Bring the Spanish lady over here because we're shooting the. I'm like, I'm the Spanish lady. I have like an actual title. So it was sort of like the moment of like the Spanish lady sitting next to the passing camera. So I'm like, okay, but am I going to be done by 7? It's like, you cannot leave. You will have been on camera by now. I mean, it was just all the nightmare of, I mean, if you know film, this is what's happening. But
Mhm.
I missed the class. I didn't go because I thought, I can't, because now the director is looking at me and it is like, I can't. So that was like such a horrible experience. I thought, you have no regard for these people that are sitting here without any explanation of how you're going to work. I mean, here I was like, justice for all the people, because there is a
You
little
are
bit
the
of,
social justice woman.
we have been sitting here with a little sandwich with zero explanation of what. I mean, it,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, we don't, that's not the way film works. I'm like, the world works with explanations of what is going on. I don't agree. It's like, you will never work in this town. So whatever. I was like, I am happy to never work in film again. I was like, that had been my thing. So at that time I had Taft Hartley. And so I didn't know that. And when I went to do Beverly Hills Cop 3, they said, you need to join. And I'm like, okay, perfect.
Now, navigating this crazy place, are there any actors at that time that start kind of coming around you, embracing you, helping you, giving you guidance like, hey, you know, don't do this, go here, this is where you want to be? Or are you still kind of not being included in the Latino community?
I would be included when I was working. I knew how to go find theater people, but not like, where do you find the people that you see on TV, which there weren't many of them. I mean, it wasn't like everybody was like, I think that there's way more people now than there was then. What happened to me is interesting. The fact that Sergio and I are together and are creative together, kind of, you can say it's a plus and a minus at times, because since we were always creating stuff together, I didn't feel like I had to go. It wasn't, I didn't even know that I wasn't going out there to put myself out there, because I would go to auditions, I would get the job, I would do the job, and then I wouldn't hear back. You know what I'm saying? From like, sometimes I would see how, like, there's certain actors that work and work and work and work and work, and I'm like, why aren't they calling me back? And I think that I wasn't good at playing, not playing in a bad way, but like staying close, as kind of in creating more intimate relationships with the even the casting directors. I mean, the casting directors, the ones that I have found throughout, they always say, we knew we could count on you. If I called you, you would deliver a great audition and you would do it. But I wasn't like friends with them. It wasn't like, call me, please. Why? I wouldn't play that because I was busy getting all of our independent projects done. One of them, which was the short of A Day Without a Mexican. And
Oh, so it started as a short
oh
first.
yeah,
Let's talk about A Day Without a Mexican.
without a
How
Mexican.
did that come about? In Because now you're in Los Angeles, you are working, but you're not being included. You're not being fully embraced
Yeah,
in your uniqueness.
yeah.
They're not looking at you, seeing the value that you bring to projects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like a repeat, like a ascending kind of,
Yeah,
in that way. But as I said, I think that I also had a little bit of fault of my own, because Sergio and I, we kind of are this bubble of creativity, that when you're doing things independently, you have to put all of your energy into that,
right.
and so what happened, his experience coming to San Diego was shocking, because he did not speak a word of English. So here he was in San Diego. I'm trying to explain San Diego and Latino-ness and Hispanics, etc., to him, and in a time when Pete Wilson, who was the governor of California, was getting reelected for his second campaign and blaming immigrants for the fault of everything. So it was a very aggressive moment in San Diego. If they heard you speak Spanish, they would turn around and just look at you, like you loser, you this, you that, what are you doing? This is my country. This is my country. And I would say, you know what? They're totally hypocritical. They're not, don't even let them get to you. Don't go. And Sergio was just like shocked, because he's like learning this other culture, and he's very good at kind of trying to adapt. I mean, but he did not speak a word of English. Not really. I mean, not at all. He had never planned to be outside of Mexico. I mean, that was not one of his desires. So anyway, in San Diego is where the idea of A Day Without a Mexican happens, because I say to him, in trying to explain the hypocrisy of this town, I said, okay,
Of
all we
this
need is
country, of this
one,
country. Yeah.
yeah, one day without Latinos, so that they understand how much they depend on us. Just one day without a Mexican, and that would be. So that starts in 90. I think I worded that in 94. And we would talk about it like, should we do a rock opera? Should we do a what? Whatever. And we were had told some friends of ours, like, oh, we have this idea of doing this, but we're not sure if it's a film, or it's a this, it's a what. And a friend of ours, actually, he was a second AD who has now become like a director. He said, okay, in front of everybody, right here, I am saying it, if these guys don't get on with their idea in the next 3 months, I'm going to steal it. And we're like, what? So, you can't. So that's kind of like what got us like, you know what? We better just let's do with what we have, which is you and me, period. Nothing. Right. So all of a sudden we go out there, start improvising with, like, I am in the short, the credits are funny because they're like, I am the director of actors, and said he was the director of the short, because I know nothing of the technical stuff, but I know how to do the improvisations that we did, because everybody was on it, improvised, but they had 3 lines that they had to say, that they had to include, because it's the character that you're playing. You are a farmer that does this. You are an executive that does that. We actually had Peter Raleigh was in the film because he heard me talking about it. Goes, I want to be in that. And so he's an agent, and he's waiting for Richard Dreyfuss to arrive. But Richard called him and said, that his gardener had not arrived, and that he could not make the meeting, and this and that. And I don't care if they're Chinese or they're whatever, but I need my actor here. This and that. I mean, so he just was improvising this whole thing, and the cast that we have for that short is quite amazing. We called all of the ones that are professional actors that are in the short are in the film in the 2004.
Wow.
But so yeah, but it's everything. All the credits are like Arau Arizmendi, Arizmendi Arau, Yareli Arizmendi, with Sergio Arau as this and that. It was like, I think we only have the guy that did the logo for us was the only person that got paid $500. Everybody else got paid $1 with a release, like, my permission for you to use this. But this was the film. The short came out in '98. Yeah.
Wow. A Day Without a Mexican is 25
One.
years old now?
25 if you count the short. It's 21 if you
21.
go from the feature
Okay.
length, which is 2000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for you that is watching, it is available on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and there are a couple of others that I saw. You must watch this film because it is so relevant
Please do.
today. I mean, it's I think it's more relevant today than it was when you first did it.
I think so too.
Because it's scary today. People are being disappeared.
Hmm.
They are vanishing, and being sent places that they have no connection to. So I love this film. I love the humor that you put in. I love the sci-fi of it all. I love the seriousness of it, the
Yeah.
racism of it, the humanity of it. You talked earlier about the dignity. There is a dignity, without giving it away. Your character at the end, towards the end, is so righteous about her growing up that it is in her heart. Mexican is in her heart. And I love that. I think for anyone watching, because we also have an international audience, to watch it so you can really get what's at the heart of what America is going, of what the United States is going through. So you could see the conflict, you could see the ignorance, you could see the lack of humanity, you could see the hypocrisy. It is that the whole nonsense of white people thinking that this is their country when it is not. You jacked this country from the natives. You too, sir, ma'am, you too are an illegal. You're here illegally.
Right.
So if you wanna start with illegal, start with yourself. Anyway, I really highly recommend you see this movie, and I want to come back to your partnership, your creative partnership with your husband, because you guys have figured out how not to wait on stuff and do your own things. And I think for people of color, that's the only way we can do. We cannot wait. I got to see, as I was preparing the interview, I got to see a lot of your work. And it broke my heart to see that you were reduced to playing some bullshit stuff, which is what I mean. You know, you get paid, you get to put money into your pension. Yay for that. But there are so many places that you could be cast as a human being
Yeah.
with dignity, and and your range is so vast, and you don't have an accent. There are some actors that they can only hit one note because their accent is keeping them from moving
Hmm.
into different spaces, but you don't have that problem. So I don't mean to go off in a tangent, but I just think it's important to understand that actors of color, if you really want a career, you have to forge it yourself. You cannot wait to get the co-star, the lead, because it's not your game. You
Hmm.
got to make your own game. So you and your husband really doing your own stuff. I salute you. And I want to ask, how challenging is it to work with the person who is closest to you?
You know what's funny is I don't recommend it if it doesn't happen naturally. And I think for us, it happened naturally because when we first met, instead of going on vacation together, let's go to Acapulco or let's go, to get to know each other, we staged a play. I had written a play that was in this cabaret style that was about the free trade agreement that was about to hit Mexico. And it was called Penny Envy. So, La Envidia del Penny, right? And it was in Spanish and in English. And he was like, why are we doing this? It was for the Performance Art Network, for one, because I worked bilingually always, right? And so I said, no, well, we can go to Colorado because they're going to take us to Colorado, and we have the cabaret that we're going to do it here in Mexico City, and it's no problem, and I was the one with the words because he said, I'm not an actor. And I'm like, I'll do the monologue. We'll use your music. We'll choreograph the dance. I mean, it was it's a crazy show. It's a great show. But Sergio had been a political cartoonist for 12 years.
Wow.
So with that training, I mean, talk about being efficient with your images. You know what I'm saying? With what you say, he can't stand for like the film going 3 hours. The director's cut of his film would be half an hour. You know what I'm saying? Because he's super efficient. And so, he loved the idea of the free trade agreement and talking about it and, what's it going to do to Mexico and, Salinas and this and that. And he really loved it. So that's the first thing that we did when we had been going out for a month and a half, right? So we were able to, I mean, I don't think that we even thought of like, what if we don't get along or what if I mean, it just happened. I mean, it was quite amazing that it happened. We went on tour to the United States with a Performance Art Network. So we showed the play was in San Diego. It was in Colorado, and yeah, we were in Boulder and some place in Boston or something. And Sergio was like wide eyed because he's like, I don't know how to even talk to these people. And here I am. He learned some words in English, and so it was, but it was an effective play. It was kind of funny. Of course, it's, the Freudian approach to the free trade agreement, right? With Penny
Mm-hmm.
Envy, but and it worked well, and I had a lot of humor. So again, in A Day Without a Mexican, you see that too. It has humor as a strategy, and it's a very serious comedy, that we kind of don't want to lose the comedy of it, but it's in that because you are laughing, we can talk more deeply about.
Right, you're telling the truth in a sandwich. It's a
I
the
like that. I like that.
the mayo and the mustard is
Yeah.
the comedy, and then you got the meat of the truth in there. Yes, I want to ask you where we are today with DEI being rolled back. You came to the States as an actor, coming, when I say the States, I mean Los Angeles, at a time when the Hollywood lie was the Latino scene is getting ready to bust wide open.
Yeah.
The market is going to go, and it has yet to go.
The sleeping giant is
It,
like,
it has yet to go. It's like, okay, it's going to happen. And you're waiting and nothing. But we're at a time right now where in Hollywood, everything has rolled back. You know, when COVID hit and George Floyd was murdered and they had all this stuff, we got to put stuff out there for people of color. We got to get right. And then as soon as this administration came in, they took everything away. They don't want they don't want people of color to exist in this country at all. And Hollywood is following that. Hollywood has taken away all the deals that were out there for people of color. Very rare at this moment. How are you able to sustain financially doing your own stuff?
for me, it has been an amazingly shocking moment. I have not really worked in the past 2 years, a paid work, a theatrical kind, zero. I mean, one of the ways that I sustained myself also was with voice work, mostly commercial voice work. So I have, products to thank, right? I mean, like Ross, JC Penney, Sears, this and that. I mean, I did a lot of work, and I do a lot of audiobooks, a job that I love because, I mean, my agent drives him insane because it doesn't pay enough. I mean, it's hours and hours of narrating on this and that. I'm like, yeah, but these characters are incredible. You know what I'm saying? This is real literature because it's mostly novels. And you're like, I mean, I'm glad to narrate Isabel Allende's, the next one. I was like, wow, you know. So as far as work, sustaining work, that has been what has kept me alive the last, 2 years. Not so much the commercial stuff because of course it's also generational, and so my voice is way too polished for what they want now. I think that the pandemic got us into this mode of like it's got to be casual, like I'm just doing it from my bedroom, and I mean it's what you see in commercials and you see in voices. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I want to da, da, da. I'm like, what kind of a voice is that? And it's like, yeah, it sounds like you just got your kid to do it, and that's kind of been the style of things. So all of a sudden it's like my voice is like, we don't want it to sound professional, and I'm like, okay, hopefully that it will swing around to the other side. One of the ways that we keep alive is usually like finding funds to fund our work. And it's usually not, I mean, a lot of people say, do you go for grants? I don't know how to write those. It's a magic language that you have to learn. It's not impossible, but you have to learn it. And I have a hard time doing the proposals and all of that. It's like by the time I'm done with the proposal, we could have shot the film. You know what I'm saying? So there's a little bit of that.
Yes, yes.
It's like, so one of the things that we also learned in A Day Without a Mexican, we made the short not with the idea of like this is like the prelude to the feature length. No, it was guerrilla filmmaking. It was emergency filmmaking. We had to get it done. We had to get it out to the audience. So the audience is who gave us a possibility of doing the feature length, because when you go to festivals, and I think for all of you who are listening, you need to know why you're there. You are there to create a relationship with the audience and with possible distributors and with possible producers that find your voice interesting because you have an audience. It's all about the audience. So when we went out with our short, it won all of the audience awards, and that's where the power was. So it was actually producers that approached us and said, would you like to do the feature length? And we didn't even have a script. We didn't have a plan. And it was like, okay, we'll look into it. This is in 99, right? And it took us, well, in 99 was a thought. And by 2001, we had a contract and we had a script and we were ready to shoot, like, and it took us still, we didn't shoot till 2003. But this was money that came from Mexico, from Televisa, from Alta Vista, who had done Amores Perros, right? And a Spanish company that was a partner with them. But so it's kind of, the money can come from unexpected places at unexpected times. The reason why I think these producers came to us was because the topic was so like, wow, we haven't seen a script like that. And who, what are these like Mexican Americans and immigrants at that moment? As you well told, the times have changed now a little bit, where there's awareness and there's more, and that's the reason why this film feels like, wow, that its time is now. The time was when we did it, but people were not seeing this whole immigration refugee crisis coming. I
Right.
saw it. I swear to you that 1998, I knew that this is where we were going, and this was not just the southwest of the United States. It's
Right.
like, no,
But
this is worldwide.
I would add to that, going back to Pete Wilson, because at that time I was doing artist in residency at a youth prison in Camarillo. So I would drive from Los Angeles up to Camarillo and I would see the farm workers, the immigrants who were picking all the food in the heat of the day. Like it would be so hot. And to say, you're taking our jobs. Nobody wants to be in the field at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at 90-degree weather. So the lies that the politicians have brought forth in the last 30 years or so is that, they're taking your jobs. No, they are not. And if people would do their homework, they would see that, hey, nobody wanted those jobs. That's why they got those immigrants coming from, that there was a time that they actually were given visas to come up to the States to do the work. And if you think about the East Coast, they bring in people from Mexico and different other parts of the world to go fishing because Americans don't want to go fishing in those very dangerous waters. And to get the crab, to get the lobsters, to get, that these are very equipped and competent people who this is what they do. This is their business. And they are brought in with visas. When they finish, they go back. But they get people in a frenzy of, they're taking your job and people are stupid enough to believe it, to go, wait a minute. They're not taking jobs away from us because I would never do that job. I would never. And during COVID, we lost so many immigrants because everything shut down. So they left. Nobody pushed them out. They were like, look, that's why we lost so many restaurants in Los Angeles, because the really good chefs were back home. And if you live in Los Angeles, you know that most restaurants, sushi places, Italian, it's all Mexicans. Why? Because nobody else wants to work in the kitchen. So that's some nonsense. I'm going on a rant.
But it's a nonsense that has a purpose, has a political purpose, but it's, and you're like, oh my gosh, but are you really listening? Like, dig a little bit. Like, you're believing it because you don't have a job and therefore somebody took your job, but it had nothing to do with that kind of job.
Or you don't want that job. I mean, because there are jobs,
Yeah.
but are you going to go look for that? The good thing today, I would say the good thing today is you now have communities that are saying, no, you're not taking Jose. You're not, that's my neighbor. We are going to fight for them. That there is an uprising to say, no, you going back to the word of this interview has been dignity. You started out by talking about your mother, and Cubans talking about the dignity of a person. That's what we're talking about. And as actors, it is so important to keep your dignity. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just actors to keep their dignity, because we're so eager to work that we give away ourselves.
We totally give away ourselves. I mean, if I had to give any advice to fellow actors, would be to at some point be on the other side, become a producer, become a casting director yourself. I mean, just have to do all of the jobs that touch actors, so that you understand how those decisions are made. You have to make them yourself, and you will see that it's when they tell you it wasn't personal that you were not cast, it really kind of wasn't, because you've been on that other side and you're like, yeah, you can't cast them, because if you cast this person, the other one looks exactly alike and you're going to have a problem. Like, whatever. If you're trying to build a family, yes. But if it's people in the office, we're going to get them confused because they look so much alike. So pick one who is, and so that's the reason you didn't. I wish that casting directors could tell you what happened in the room and why were you ultimately not picked, but that it's not about your work. We have to be confident that if you're in this and you have been in this for a while, you are talented. There is no doubt about that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, stop it. It's not easy, and you have to find your way. The way, for example, that I found my way is I wrote a novel. And I, really, part of the reason why I chose to write a novel was because I don't want to write another script or another play that is not complete until it is produced, because I lose power. I don't control it. You know what I'm saying? And yes, of course, when I get money, if we get it happening, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write something that I control from A to Z. And you know what? It's very lonely. Yes, it's very lonely because no one's waiting for it. No one's demanding it. But all of a sudden, if you really can go into that place, and it's part of you, right? Because I'm not saying everybody's a writer or wants to be, but for me, it soothed me. Finally, it was like, this is my world. I don't care if anyone reads it, which now that it's done, like, I really want everyone to read it. But as I was doing it, I'm like, fine, it's mine. It's what, I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to go as wild as I want with as many characters as I want. I'm going to say whatever needs saying. And then, of course, you polish it, you do it, you do it. And now the most ironic thing happened. Originally, I wrote the script. Yeah, I mean, I read the script. I wrote the novel in English because I was, going to like a writing workshop where everybody spoke English, nobody spoke Spanish. And to me, it's fine. I mean, the language is not the thing that defines it. But in trying to go out there and get a publishing house, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, talk about acting world being hard. The literary world is hell, because it's kind of like the art world. If you don't have like an insider totally pushing for you, they don't need. There's so many books that are written. So if somebody doesn't say you have to read this, somebody that they trust. So it's got to be coming from, somebody within the publishing world saying, this is such an interesting book, and da, da, da. And you can't just send it to them and they will read it. I mean, they say they do, but I kind of don't know if they do, unless it's in the pile that is already recommended. So anyway, it's its own world. It was tight. But out of the blue, and I'm not going to go through the whole history. It's a fun, exciting history, but it's a Spanish company, a Spanish publisher was very interested in how I described my novel, and they really wanted to hear more. And out of the blue, it comes out that I've been doing the translation slowly because nobody's like waiting for it. And I said, "Oh yes, I have the manuscript in Spanish." And it's like, "Oh well, we would love to see it in 2 weeks." And they said, because right now we're busy with this conference, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. So if you could send it in 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to translate it in 2 weeks. So I mean, you kind of need a little push to get the final things done, right? I mean, there's got to be a reason.
You need that incentive. I want to ask you this question, and I want to go back to what we were just talking about, because every artist faces a turning point. right? So there's a moment when either with a role or a project that you are challenged to the point where you start doubting and you start feeling like, should I have done this? Maybe this isn't what I should be doing. Maybe I should be doing something else. It seems to me, I might be wrong, but my instincts say you've been at this place more than once.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you have to kind of invent ways of getting yourself, pulling yourself out. I'm bad at asking for help or knowing where to go. But what I have found in having been at these lows is that you find it in very unlikely places. You just need to kind of open up your ears and eyes. And for a moment, I was so into, when I started to write the novel, I was in a bad place because of a documentary that we had been working on that kind of didn't pan out. But I had put in a lot of my love and a lot of my time, and because I didn't own the intellectual property, right, it could be taken away from me. And I was like, okay, you know what? Never again, if it's not my material, if it's not, will I put in that much work? And that is kind of why, I said, well, if I write a novel, it's my novel and that's it. You know what I'm saying? And it's not going to be anybody else's and whatever. So I that's how I trusted myself. But at the same time, I became very into, not into spiritual, like I ran into Eckhart Tolle's New Earth, and I don't even know how it was. Oh, I know how it was. I was down and I was with a friend who is a scientist, and I asked her about what is the difference between Zen and Buddhist, right? So she started on this whole discussion of like, Greg is more Zen, I am Buddhist. Buddhists have rules. Zen is kind of more open. I mean, she was, you know what? You should read this book, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm just like so down. I have no other option. It's like, I'll read this book. And she gave me her copy of Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. And she was very clean in her notes because I'm usually one to write all over. And I started, I was like, okay, don't touch it. It's not your book. You can't like, and at one point I was like, oh my God, this. And I underlined it and I'm like, I'm gonna have to buy her a new copy and then copy all of her little points because she had dots, little dots. She was such a scientist about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I started to draw and I'm like, okay, this is now my book and I will this and that. And that. But it was such a wonderful way to be in dialogue with something else, to get you out of your own circularity of like, oh my gosh, I feel like unfairness and da 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 da. And it was all of a sudden, I was like, oh, well, Eckhart would say this, da da da. So, you need to just get out there somehow and be in dialogue with something outside yourself. I think that's very important. I'm lucky to have Sergio, but Sergio is like he's like it's not that he doesn't need somebody to push him, but he pushes himself, no matter what. He will do the song, he will do the painting, he will be, you will find him working at 6 a.m. just because. And it's like nobody's waiting for that. It's like, yeah, but I want to finish it and I want to do it. And he's
The
self-motivated that way.
satisfaction. And I think that's what we aspire to, is to
Right.
be those artists who just, I'm doing it because I want to. I want to see what this is going to turn out to be. I want to do that, as opposed to, and I think part of that is, at least in Hollywood, we've been conditioned to wait to do something.
Wait. Yeah.
And if you are an artist, you have to dig in and go, okay, how will I express myself? You were talking about working so hard on a documentary that you did not have the IP for. You were the surrogate. You were carrying that baby. You were birthing that baby for somebody else, and then they took it from you. I want to touch on that because as independent artists, we cannot afford to work on other people's projects. We can't, because at any minute they could take it and you have no recourse. It
Hmm.
is not yours. You did the birthing, you had the
Hmm.
labor pains, but they're taking that child from you.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is work on your own projects. And if you're going to collaborate with somebody, get it in writing so that
Get it in
you
writing.
are protected. Because as artists, when we like something, we throw ourselves into it 150%. And we don't wait to make sure that we are being protected business wise,
Right.
and being a guerrilla filmmaker, you have to do your stuff.
Yeah.
From when you, as you were talking, what I was thinking about was when you guys did, from the time you did the short of A Day Without a Mexican to doing the movie, social media was not available.
No, no.
So you couldn't put the word out. The good thing for guerrilla filmmakers today, or artists who are not waiting, is that you have social media, which is a valuable tool. You have different GoFundMe campaigns that you
Yes.
can seek, that there's so many opportunities, non-traditional, out there, that you can access funds that before, going back to you doing A Day Without a Mexican, you had to go to the gatekeepers. We can make movies on our own now. We don't have to wait for
Yeah.
anybody. We can write our own plays. We can do our own one person shows. We can do our own stand up comedy programs. It doesn't take a lot like it used to. You talking about your novel. I mean, somebody who's writing a book, they can self-produce. They can, there are many venues right now to express your creativity and then put it up for sale. That wasn't available. And I think because the business is so fractured, you have all these streaming services, and they have figured out how to hire you to do 6 months work in a week and pay you for a week,
Exactly. No,
to say we're going to shoot you out in a week. You're going to do 25 scenes in 1 week.
in one
You
week.
will not have a break. No, this is how we're shooting you. They're the commercials, they're going very non-union and screwing the actors, and
Yeah.
that's where dignity has to come in, where actors go, no, I'm sorry, you cannot AI my likeness
Yeah.
in perpetuity and give me $200.
It's just we're in amazing and horrible times. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
and we have to be smart enough to say, okay, wait a minute, we cannot serve the same blueprint that was being done in the 80s.
yeah.
It's a different time, so we get to be more in control of our art than we were back then.
But I have to say, Lydia, there's a price for being in control of your art, because you're not, and it is because the blueprint has changed. There's no residuals, there's no royalties, to most of the work that you do. It no longer follows you, not even a little bit, and you're like, how am I supposed to do this? It's disturbing.
But here's where you also have to be an entrepreneur. As you were
Yes.
talking about A Day Without a Mexican, I'm thinking, oh my God, okay, you could actually take your film, make a little curriculum, and take it on the road, where you could present it, where even though you don't have residual, that is a gift that keeps giving, to take it on the road. First of all, you are such a well-read person, and you have so much information on the history of Latinos, and where so many people don't read. You are reading. You are a reading woman. I remember going to a workshop at the Writers Guild maybe 15 years ago. And the whole workshop was about taking one piece of content and putting it in different spaces. So you had income coming in. So it wasn't, so I could take my script and go, okay, I'm going to do a curriculum for colleges. I'm going to take this on the road and do it as a one person show. I'm going to take this and do a film script. I'm going to do a book for it. From that one idea, I have 6 different tentacles that are going out. And so that's where we are living today, is just taking your stuff and going, okay, how do I make this? I'm the CEO, because as actors, we are the guns for hire. But what is happening today is, no, we are the boss. So we got to figure out, how am I going to make money out of this? So I'm going to sell the DVD. I'm going to do a little Q&A. I'm going to take it and show it at different places. And then I'm going to have merch that I take with me. And what's so wonderful is they have these companies that you can make the merch print on demand. So you get it, you don't even have to ship it. You can create a online store and put it right with your website and say, water for chocolate, get the poster, blah 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 blah. Now you're making an income without having to put out all that money. Then when you need to bring merch, then you just find something more reasonable that you can then say, oh yeah, we're charging $50 for the video to sign it, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I just because I think sometimes as actors we start to feel paralyzed because we are thinking we're waiting for them. Ain't nobody coming to
Ain't
rescue
nobody
us.
coming. That's the thing we
No,
need to know. We
no
need to
one's
realize
coming to rescue us, especially not today. They want to
that.
eliminate you and use AI. And so, they haven't figured it out. We're going through incredible changes in this country, from the supermarket where they're trying to get rid of all the cashiers and do, self checkout, and not understanding you are losing money. You are an idiot. Una idiota porque tú no sabes que te están robando. To save $25, you're going to lose $3,000. It's like the greed. It's the same thing with the streamers. The greed, instead of seeing it as what it is, we are in partnership. You need actors. You can do AI projects, but they cannot do what actors do. You can write a script in AI, but it doesn't have the heart that someone who writes, someone who feels and knows stuff. So as creatives, whether you're an actor, whether you are a filmmaker, whether you are a fine visual artist, this is a wonderful time to sell your wares.
Yeah, but we do, as you said, we need to become entrepreneurs. We need to become, and sometimes we feel like, well, but that's not what I do. It's like, well, you damn well
But
will.
that's what we do
Yeah,
now.
we have to.
I mean, guerrilla filmmakers have been doing this for a long time, so we do it now. It's like, especially people of color, we know how to sell stuff. Like as a kid, I was always selling stuff. We were, you talk about being in Catholic school. I was in Catholic school. I sold everything in Catholic school. They put you to sell stuff. I sold chocolates. I sold Christmas cards. I sold all kinds of stuff. So I got that skill set as a kid, and I was very good at it.
Oh, look at
So,
you.
oh yeah, let me tell you, if there was a gift, like they would say, whoever sells the most will get
Ah,
this gift. Man, that was it. I was off to the races, and I remember in sixth grade, the class revolting against the teacher because he was setting up. At the time, Parker pens were really popular,
oh yeah, yeah.
and he was like, okay, whoever sells the most chocolate will get a Parker pen at the end of the week. And everyone was so upset because that's not fair, because Lydia's going to get it. And so the first 2 weeks, guess who got that Parker pen?
Wow.
And that was it. They eliminated me from that. And then my teacher said, well, you got to give everybody else a chance. I said, no, I don't. I'm the one selling the candy. But
Wow.
I say
That's a
all that to
situation.
say is we do know how to do things other than acting, and we
Yeah.
just have to put that in gear, because when you are doing guerrilla filmmaking, which I have been part of for the last 20 years, and doing shows and that kind of stuff, is you figure it out. You just figure it out, and you just go, this is part of being a creative. This is just part, it's not like it used to be, because you had all these other people that were getting your money. I started in the record business as a kid. I started in the record business, and what I learned was that artists never really made money with their records, because when you get signed, you are automatically in the red. And unless your first album is platinum, you're not going to see money. And if they give you 2 or 3 albums, you will owe them for the rest of your career, because you got to pay them back. And they charge you like the hospital does when you go to, no, they do. They charge you 10 times the amount. So if you go and you get a Band-Aid at the emergency room, they charge you $300 for a 5-cent Band-Aid. Well, it's the same way in the record business and the film business too. If you go with a little distributor and you give them your film, they start charging you for everything. So you never see back end anything. And I'm sure you know that from your film, but that was an eye opener for me to see, oh, that's, so you got to do your own stuff. You got to be your own accountant, your own publicist. You have to be the boss, and you write the checks. Don't leave it for anybody else. Okay, I'll shut up. My last question to you, because I could talk to you forever. You just have so much to share, is what would you like to do in the next 3 years artistically?
I mean, I'm very excited about the novel. My novel is going to be published next year in March, around there. And I'm trying to have no expectation, although it's a weird thing to have no expectation. It kind of means like you're going to let it like be by itself on whatever it does. And I don't agree with that, because I think that we need to, it's your baby. You need to get out there and push it and talk about it. I'm excited about it. I'm really excited. I love my log line is like fantastic. You want to hear it? Well, it's called
Yes.
the film it's called Past Perfect, and it's the log line is: death is inevitable, family is not. And so I'm very excited to talk about themes that come out of that, and the writing of it in itself is an exciting exercise for me, because of the English and the Spanish. Because Spanish, it's the structure of the language itself doesn't allow it to be as straightforward as English allows you to be. When it's like, do you want to go for lunch? No. And then in Spanish, you cannot just say, ¿Quieres ir a comer? No. It's like, no, ¿por qué? O sea, no, ¿qué? What? I mean, you don't, no, ¿sabes qué? Mejor más tarde, or whatever, whatever, whatever. You can't, because it sounds rude, right? It sounds like, qué grosera. What do you
Right.
mean?
The
No.
translation doesn't add up.
So it's been a very interesting, because the exercise in English, in a sense, was like, don't be fancy with your language, be truthful, And so in that way, I just can't wait to talk to people who can kind of see the two realities, the two cultures working in the text. So hopefully in the next 3 years, I will take some time with that. Now we have a show that we're doing together, Sergio and I, Tocada y Fuga.
This is the musical.
That's a musical, and I think it was kind of a wild thing, because for Sergio it was a record, right? It was like his album, and it's all classical music. I mean, it's Tchaikovsky, Bach, Beethoven, with the melodies of them, with the arrangements of Sergio, who actually wrote lyrics to them. So each one is a story. And when I saw that, I said, no, we have to put it up. I mean, this has got to be a play. He hates musicals and he hates plays, right? I mean, in terms. So I said to him, remember, it's kind of cabaret, it's carpa, it's this, it's that. So we've come up with our own genre that is called a stand opera. right? So it's kind of like a stand-up opera, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we came up with these crazy costumes that are steampunk, and so I'm hoping it's been out for 2 years. Then we rested this whole last year. We didn't do it, and now festivals are wanting to kind of come around. So I'm hoping that this becomes a bigger thing. In my crazy mind, I always thought of it as Jesus Christ Superstar. It starts with the LP, it goes to a play, and maybe hopefully we can, turn it into a film that
I love
everybody
that.
sees, because it is of that dimension, I think. I mean, I was blown away that the response of the audience is right there. And it's just that the money to get it to all those steps is like, where is it? I can't wait for a producer to arrive from somewhere. But as we have been talking, no one's going to save you. So it's
Why don't you at the shows offer a GoFundMe? Hey, if you love this, please share with your friends. Help us. We want to get it to this place because people will give. People will give. It especially for something that no one has seen. You know what I mean? Like
it's
this,
very
it's
unique.
not right. So they're going to give. I wanted to say something to you real quick. Something that I learned this year is not to have an expectation, but to set the intention.
Ah,
That when you set an intention, you get there. When you have an expectation, you're waiting for something to come to you. But
yeah.
in the intention of it, you are driving the train,
Set the intention. Yes.
not the expectation. Set the intention. What do I want? I want to sell 100 books. I want to do 20 interviews. I want to be able to put this in 10 colleges. That's the
Yeah.
intention, right?
Be
So
specific. Be
yes,
specific.
because expectation is bullshit. Intention is money in the bank.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of operating. It's like, how do we operate from a place of power instead of a place of begging?
Of hoping that it happens,
And it's not really hope, because
No.
real hope has action to it.
Yes.
False hope has victimization to it. I hope that they do this. I hope, it's like, no, no, hope is life affirming. Real hope is life
Yeah.
affirming.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it's that thing of just changing definition of a word so that it gives you the power.
I love this. You see, this is why I had to be here today with you to hear that. I love it. Yes, yes, yes.
I first of all, I just want you to know how much I love you, how much you inspire me. Even though I don't see you a lot, I follow you on social media. You always inspire me because you are fire. You bring it with you
Wow.
wherever you go. You are just lively. You are independent. You are honest, and you are fierce about
Wow.
your stuff, and because you fight for people, you fight for stuff. And that's not what we see in Los Angeles most of the time.
Hmm.
We see people needy and selling their soul. We see a lot of broken people, and
Yeah.
so you bring an authenticity to art. And I go back to having looked at some of your work and being mad that you were not at that period given roles that were at your level. And that's what it was then, and that's what it was for most actors of color. But the beauty is that you figured out other ways to get your art out, and that makes you a hero to me. So I just want you to know how much I love you, appreciate you, and how important it was for me to do this conversation with you, because I want everybody else to know how amazing you are.
My Lydia, thank you so much. This is the to have space to just be here with you has been a gift, an incredible gift. And believe me, because otherwise, as I said, you are in your little loop and your little bubble, and you need to get out. And you have now allowed me to get out. Look at this incredible advice that you gave me at the end about the intention. Set the intention, not the expectation. I will carry that with me. I thank you for the space. A joy being with you.
And March, when the book comes out, we will have another conversation. I would love that. I would love that. Thank you so much. That's it for today's episode of Acting Smarter Now. A huge, huge, huge thank you to Yareli Arizmendi for reminding us not to sit and wait for Hollywood to come calling, but get up and create your own projects. That's what it's all about, people, making it happen. If you love what you heard, please let me know in the comments. Even if you didn't, I want to know your feedback. And while you're there, support us. Buy us a coffee, share this, like us, subscribe to us. We'll take all of it. Don't go anywhere because coming up, we have another insightful video filled with tools that will help take you from undiscovered to unstoppable.